Algeria could get its first new leader in 20 years. Protests turn to celebrations as Abdelaziz Bouteflika decides not to run for a fifth term. I'm Imran Garda, and today's newsmaker is the Algerian presidency. Well, it's a dramatic result to weeks of mass protests. Algeria's President Abdelaziz Bouteflika won't be running for another term, and elections he likely would have won are postponed. But while many in the opposition are rejoicing over an apparent victory for democracy, others fear a power vacuum. And they have plenty of reasons to be concerned. With no new date for elections, when exactly will Bouteflika step down? And what's stopping him from installing a hand-picked successor? What role will the army assume? And could the president's inner circle intervene? If the opposition is to be believed, a man too sick to appear in public for years is being propped up by business elites who've gotten richer, while the rest of the country is on the brink of economic ruin. So, how did Algeria get to this point? Let's take a look. Joining me now in London is Harun Hussein. He was a captain in the Algerian Secret Service until he defected in the 1990s and founded a group for military dissidents. And in our studio is North Africa analyst Lakhdar Khattas, who wrote the book Algeria and the Cold War, International Relations and the Struggle for Autonomy. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Harun, let me start with you. Has this been a victory for people power?
Well, absolutely not, because it is simply a constitutional coup, which is, a coup against the constitution, conducted by France. That's it. It's a sit back. It's in fact somehow France is telling the Algerian people, "I'm here to stay. I'm here for a long time." You cannot imagine that with the interest she's got, that she's going to just leave Algeria just like that. Bearing in mind that since 1962, it did appear now that France is taking the Algerian gas for free. And they were doing so from 1962 to 2000.
Harun, allow me to interrupt you just for a second here. So you have all these people, hundreds of thousands of people take to the streets. They say, no fifth term for Bouteflika. We don't want you to run for a fifth term. And eventually he says, okay, I won't run for a fifth term, and I'm going to listen to you. People are celebrating on the streets. Aren't you giving an overly cynical interpretation of what might be true? But at least, perhaps there's something good on the surface here, right?
No, absolutely not. Not all people they were, some people, they were fooled about what happened yesterday. But I can tell you that most of them, they're aware of what's going on. They know that what happened yesterday was just like a setup, because Bouteflika is not able, in fact, to give the interviews they've shown on the TV yesterday. They were fake videos. They were shown just to try and set up what they're trying to do and gain some time. While Bouteflika now is in a state of coma and unable, in fact, to do anything at all.
Okay, Lakhdar, do you share that cynical view of what happened?
Well, what the scenes we've seen last night in the streets of Algiers and other towns are a mix. There is a sort of orchestration of the celebration. There is some celebration, but there is also an orchestration of the celebrations I mean, if you do reverse engineering of what happened last night, is that the first pictures or images footage showed on the pro-regime private channels, which tells a lot of the credibility of that. In addition to the youth online have now done some analysis of the footage and the videos, and there is reason to believe that it's not quite clear that they're accurate or that up to date. So, yet there was some joyful feeling that the people, the protesters, they managed to make the regime do a reverse or U-turn on its decisions. That they feel that people power has achieved something, but they are still steadfast and they're in the streets. Right. And we've seen it last night that they are still saying that we need to continue the engagement and stay in the streets. And there today in the universities, in many universities there in the streets, and there are strikes still ongoing.
Lakhdar, do you share Harun's view that the French are pulling the strings? We heard from the French Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian welcoming the decision of Bouteflika not to stand for re-election, saying France expresses its hope that a new dynamic that can answer the deep aspirations of the Algerian people will rapidly take hold. Is there something deeper to be read there, that France has been pulling the strings?
Definitely, it would be simplistic to believe the contrary. I mean, the history, the strategic links between the two countries, I mean, what is at stake is huge. So the position of Algeria, its role in North Africa, it would be simplistic to believe that there was nothing there. La Mamra was in France just the day before, and we've seen it in Le Drian's answer to the Parliament's MP answer in the Assembly, General Assembly. So, yeah.
Okay, let's have a little listen to some of the people on the streets in hearing the news that Bouteflika would not stand for another term. Here's what some of them had to say.
We do not accept the extension that was announced. They said that elections would be coordinated. That is fine, as long as they are the scheduled elections. We simply do not accept this.
So let me then ask you, Harun, for you and the protesters who are cynical and saying this is not enough, this seems like a setup, what then needs to be done in addition to Bouteflika saying, I don't want to run for a fifth term?
Sorry, I just want to correct the term. We're not cynical, we're just realistic. Because, as your honorary guest said, what is in stake here is huge. I mean, France cannot imagine its future without Algeria. And I can tell you something. There is a wake-up now within the population, either military or civilians. We all know that since 1962, we had like a fake independence. This is for sure. And people now, they want from France to get out of Algeria in once and for all. I mean, we would like, in fact, to share our resources, to conduct our politics like whatever we would like to do. So it is as simple as that, except that it won't happen just like that. Because, I mean, you need to know that, as I said before, Algeria for France is like blood. I mean, just imagine, as I said before, getting gas for free. It's huge. Plus, I mean, I'm not talking about only that, but I'm talking as well about the strategic position of Algeria, about the fact that Algeria doesn't want another Turkey at its doors. This is for sure. And as I said to some other analysts, I mean, France, she doesn't want now to have two Turkeys, because they're fighting Turkey for its position, and they're fighting now Algeria not to become another Turkey. And we need to know that in the world now, in the Islamic world, there are only two countries with huge potential, only Algeria and Turkey. So what is at stake now is huge. Right. I mean, and America is supporting France.
Okay, so Lakhdar, who has the most to lose if Bouteflika and his circle truly gives up power?
Well, the structure of the system or the regime in Algeria, it started like crony capitalism. By the time Bouteflika came, huge oil resources, revenues of oil. It's mutated by the time of his second, third term into state capture, an elite, business elite, backed by the military that have, in a sense, captured the resources of the country.
So with the news yesterday, they're not going to roll over and die. They're still around.
They're still around. They hope so. Depends on how the strong the momentum stays. They've made the tactic that when they've made early university holidays for the students. The tactic behind that, or the rationale, was that to empty the big towns of the students, send them to the periphery, to the inland towns, and then give in these semi-reforms, and then the protesters will continue, but there will be not as much as because the Friday to Friday cycle of protests were sustained during the week by the third Tuesday protests of the students. That was the tactic why to send students back home. But what's happening now is that we've seen that those students going to the periphery will try to organize online and on the ground in their small and towns, but also those who are in the streets in the big towns will keep the mobilization. This is the same dilemma that Ben Ali faced when it happened in December, end of December, to send students back or to call them back to send them to the periphery, or to announce the start of the term in early January.
Understood.
The dilemma made him lose his power, and scenario like that is unfolding in Algeria right now.
It's interesting that you mentioned Ben Ali, because a lot of people, not just Algerians, are cautiously watching the situation because of the events of 2011 across the region, right? I guess a lot of people naively just believed in 2011 and 2012, just each country, one after the other, would just have revolution upon revolution and the power structures wouldn't fight back. Harun, let me ask you, national dialogue is called for by Bouteflika and those around him. Is it going to happen? And would you support it?
Well, honestly with you, I mean, I need to point something which is very important, is that in 1992, I witnessed, because I was there, a coup against the Algerian president, Charlie Benjdid. And at that time, it was conducted by France. And I was there. So it cost Algeria nearly 300,000 people. And now we're seeing a clearly coup, a constitutional coup from France, which I hope it's not going to degenerate, because I can assure you something, that France won't let go just like this.
Okay, we're paying attention. We're keeping a close eye on Algeria. For the moment, gentlemen, I'm going to thank you for joining us here on the Newsmakers, Harun Hussein and Dr. Ghitas. Thanks again for joining us. Still to come, in Canada, 2 government ministers abandoned ship and quit. Could a swirling political scandal cost Justin-trudeau his job? And Hungary's Prime Minister threatens to ditch the largest bloc in the European Parliament. But is he bluffing? And if not, is Jean-Claude Juncker's party in trouble? Justin-Trudeau has been the poster boy for liberals around the world, standing up for gender equality, science, and honesty in politics. 3 years later, and the halo has well and truly slipped. He's accused of interfering in the prosecution of a bribery case, allegedly bullying his former Attorney General on behalf of a big engineering company, SNC-Lavalin. Now, 2 of his top ministers have resigned, and while technically Trudeau has done nothing illegal, in the Canadian Court of Public Opinion, he may have committed the worst kind of offence. He refused to say he was sorry. With more, here's Denise Savoya.
The Prime Minister's fingerprints are all over this sleazy affair to let his friends off the hook.
It's the biggest political scandal to rock Canada in decades, and it could derail Justin Trudeau's leadership after just 1 term as Prime Minister. At the centre of the scandal is Canada's former Attorney General and Justice Minister, Jody Wilson-Raybould. She's the first Indigenous woman to be appointed to the role. But she was inexplicably demoted in January, and a few weeks later, she quit the cabinet entirely.
I experienced a consistent and sustained effort by many people within the government to seek to politically interfere in the exercise of prosecutorial discretion in my role as the Attorney General of Canada in an inappropriate effort to secure a deferred prosecution agreement with SNC-Lavalin.
4 years ago, SNC-Lavalin was charged with corruption for allegedly paying $46 million in bribes to secure Libyan government contracts during Muammar Gaddafi's rule. A conviction could see the company face a 10-year ban on federal contracts, but the case is yet to go to court. Last year, after lobbying from SNC-Lavalin, Trudeau's government amended the law to allow for what's called deferred prosecution agreements. The change means companies accused of economic crimes can avoid criminal charges by admitting wrongdoing and paying a fine instead. In October, Canada's public prosecutor decided SNC-Lavalin didn't meet the criteria for such a deal. And while Trudeau has not denied discussing the case with Wilson-Raybould, he has denied that he pressured her into dropping the charges.
I stressed the importance of protecting Canadian jobs and reiterated that this issue was one of significant national importance. Ms. Wilson-Raybould left that meeting saying that she would speak with her deputy minister and the clerk about this matter, but that the decision was hers alone.
But the scandal has refused to die down. It's been the subject of 2 investigations, and last week, a second woman in Trudeau's government quit, saying she'd lost confidence in how the government has dealt with the matter. The Prime Minister's former top political aide, Gerald Butts, also resigned last month.
This is a story of 2 people who hold high office, the Prime Minister and the former Attorney General, both of whom did their jobs to the best of their abilities, as did their respective staff. However, a breakdown in the trust that held the relationship together occurred, and as the point person in PMO for the Attorney General, I take responsibility for that breakdown.
The leader of Canada's Conservative Party has repeatedly called for the Prime Minister to resign.
Because the Justin Trudeau we saw today is the real Justin Trudeau. A Prime Minister who can't manage his own office, let alone the affairs of a great nation.
Canadians are due to vote in a federal election in October. But will Justin Trudeau be able to repair his reputation before then? Denise Savoya, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now is former Canadian diplomat Colin Robertson. He's also Vice President at the Canadian Global Affairs Institute. And in Calgary, Alberta, is Bitcoin entrepreneur Ethan Liu. Thank you both for joining us here on The Newsmakers. Colin, let me start with you. So, no sex, no money, no illegality, seemingly, yet Trudeau is under pressure. Is this worthy of the scandal that it seems to be?
Well, in Canadian terms, yes, but in international terms, no. What's happened is that Trudeau, who has campaigned as virtuous, offering hope and competence, is looking less than virtuous and not very competent.
Okay, so Ethan, 2 high-profile female ministers resigned. The first Indigenous minister, Justice Minister resigned. Is that really damaging to Trudeau?
Well, I think there's no question that it is, of course, damaging. Trudeau set a very high bar for himself when he came into power, and he absolutely took that bar and beat himself up with it. But I would question how much this throws onto the Liberal brand that isn't there already. I think ever since Trudeau came into power, he has not been living up to what he promised. There was the electoral reform, there is reform to government transparency, and then there is the whole botched inquiry into missing and murdered Aboriginal women. So this, it might not be that bad.
Okay, Colin, he's failing to live up to standards across the board. Address that.
I think that the bar was very high. It was a bit like the bar for Obama and Emmanuel Macron. And I think that the public likes to think that a progressive can do all the things that they would like to do, but then reality hits them. I don't think that, I think overall the record has been judged fairly positively until this scandal. And now he's taken a bit of a hit, but whether it will have a long-term impact That's hard to tell. I think let's wait 3 months.
Yeah, so even though there's no illegality as such, there's the word bribery, Colin, and the OECD's working group on bribery basically said, and I quote, that it's concerned by recent allegations of interference in the prosecution of SNC-Lavalin that are subject to proceedings in the House of Commons, Standing Committee on Justice and Human Rights. The fact that the OECD is saying this about Canada, this is Canada, right? We're not talking about Syria or, a country known for corruption. The fact that Canada and bribery are in the same sentence, what does that do to Canada's standing?
Well, it hurts the Canadian brand, but let's keep in mind, this is a company that did commit bribery in Algeria 5-6 years ago. Officials resigned. They have been prosecuted, although the prosecutions have not always gone through. So there's no question that this company has done wrong. What the question is, do you punish the entire company or do you punish the malefactors within the company? And there is a provision in the law that passed, and you might question how it passed, for what they call deferred prosecution. And other countries do the same thing. This is a big company, particularly big in the Prime Minister, Mr. Trudeau's home province of Quebec. So I think the government had decided for the national interest reason they would rather go a different way, but the Justice Minister and some of her colleagues chose not to. How that's all going to play out is still to be determined.
Okay, let's bring in Conservative radio host Charles Adler, who joins us now. Charles, Prime Minister Trudeau's saying, I'm protecting 9,000 Canadian jobs, no more, no less.
Well, he's never been able to prove that there would be 9,000 jobs at risk. So the presumption right now among the Canadian people is this is just something that the SNC-Lavalin, the company, lobbyists are saying, because he just can't provide any kind of independent evidence of that. So he's got a huge credibility problem. So number one, we've got a credibility problem because we hate the idea of Canada not having a 100% reputation for rule of law. That's what's most important to the overwhelming majority of the Canadian people. This is just incredibly embarrassing. And it's doubly embarrassing because the Prime Minister of our country has no credibility on the case that he's making to the Canadian people. At least that's what the majority of people are telling me on the phones and on my email, on my messaging. I don't have a scientific poll to offer you, but it would appear right now that this issue is really damaging the government in most of the polls. And the assumption is it's this issue that you and I are talking about right now that is damaging the government's credibility.
Right. Ethan, would you agree with Charles and his Conservative audience on his talk show?
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't disagree much with him, but I would also say there is another narrative here that Trudeau is trying to help people get jobs in Quebec, which and I don't want to generalize the people that way, but it is not like the rest of Canada. And there was a column in a Quebec newspaper that said all of this was a conspiracy in order to take down SNC-Lavalin, which is to Quebec what Huawei is to China. It's a crown jewel, and Quebec is the linchpin of liberal power. And in the past few days, in the Prime Minister's non-apology, when he seemed to double down and talk about jobs, it seems that he really wants to go that route, and there could be something to be done there.
Okay, so Colin, do we underestimate the power that SNC-Lavalin has in Quebec itself?
Well, I think there's no doubt that SNC-Lavalin is a Quebec crown jewel, but I would just say that SNC-Lavalin has employees across Canada, but it is primarily based out of Quebec. But it is a lead Canadian firm in engineering, and there's no doubt that members of SNC-Lavalin, committed crimes, corruption, bribery some years ago. And how that's going to play through, as I say, it's still to be determined. There's no question that this has also hurt Mr. Trudeau, and the link to Huawei, where we've taken, the Prime Minister says, a principled stand around rule of law with the American request for a rendition of the Huawei Chief Financial Officer, Meng Wanzhou. I think people look at these two and say, this doesn't add up. Prime Minister on the one hand does this, and on the other hand, it looks like it's just local politics.
Charles, no matter how much we analyze it, he still hasn't broken the law. Does that mean anything to you?
Well, it does, except that the largest issue for Canadians is the reputation of our country. We care about our country far more than we care about a particular prime minister. We also tend to believe, based on the polls now, this is not about conservative or liberal, based on the polls that the former justice minister, former attorney general, who he demoted, fired, any way you want to put it, she's no longer there. Most people believe her and not him.
Right.
And in this he says, she is winning, overwhelmingly winning the hearts of the Canadian people. So that's a monstrous issue for him. I get that this doesn't appear to be a scandal by world standards, because there's no allegation that the Prime Minister has taken money, and nobody has been killed. But by Canadian standards, we're a very, very stable country with a very, very stable rule of law. And it would appear right now that the captain of the ship is not 100% credible. And so that's the problem here. Whether we give you the ship analogy or the airplane analogy, at the moment we don't trust the pilot. That's a problem for our country.
Okay, so Ethan, does the pilot need to be changed?
I think it's going to be hard to change the pilot. I've been lecturing at a local university the past few days, and outside of students in the social sciences, few people have even heard of this issue. And the election, it's a long ways away, and anything can happen between now and then. Okay,
and just to drill down into the details of the actual poll that Charles had mentioned, Colin, let me ask you about that. I've got the figures here. A total of 67% of Canadians now say they believe Wilson Raybould's version of what happened and not the Prime Minister's. So I'm not a mathematician, but that's 2/3, right? So 2/3 of people believe her version of events. They don't trust him. When it comes to the next election, is he going to be out of a job?
Well, I think I'd go back to the poll. I think they believe her account. I don't think that there's, on this issue, yes, I think they tend to believe her, but I think overall they've not lost complete trust in him. His polling is still ahead of his the two people who will lead the parties that will be the principal opposition, Mr. Scheer from the Conservatives and Mr. Jagmeet Singh from the NDP. So against himself, yes, he does badly, but against the two others, I think the public they've lost some confidence in him, but they think overall he's still the best person to lead the country. Will this hurt him going into the election? Again, we're 6 months away. Let's wait and see what the issues are then. I think this was self-inflicted. It's still unfolding. Thus far, he has looked less than competent, less than virtuous. If that stays, then I do think that hurts him. But he has proven himself to be a very good retail politician, a very good campaigner. And in Canada, our campaigns, there's a lot of volatility in the voters. You have about 1/3 of the electorate that's ready to swing one way or the other. So it's still a long ways till that 6-week campaign.
Charles Adler, a self-inflicted wound, a dent, but not a major dent. Would you agree with that?
It's not a fatal blow yet, and if you don't mind, I know that sometimes on these shows everybody opposes everybody 100% of the time, so I'm going to disappoint some conservative friends of mine and agree with Colin Robertson on this. Mr.
Typical
Robertson,
Canadians, you spoil my show.
We believe in consensus here. Look, on this one note, and it's an important note, campaigns really do matter. I would say that Justin-Trudeau, I'm not considered a supporter of his, but I would say that he is one of the best retail politicians I've ever seen. I've seen his father. In fact, I voted for his father when I was 19 years old. And the point I'm trying to make is that once the campaign begins, it's anybody's guess as to what will happen and what the issue will be on the day that we actually vote. But if I'm asked the question, who's the best retail politician in Canada right now, I'd say, well, it's not just me telling you, it's Colin Robertson telling you, and he's a man of considerable experience, and I don't think it's a partisan perspective he's offering. He's accurate, he's credible, he's a great resource, and at the moment, the Liberals have only one strong campaigner, and his name is Justin-Trudeau.
Colin, I want to ask about actual sort of political practice, whether the OECD warning, putting Canada on notice, and the scandal that has ensued as a result of this, if this is going to change anything politically on the ground, or how business is done, especially when it comes to mega corporations.
Well, it's part of the reason it's at the OECD is because Canadians wanted to put it there. So in a sense, this is coming back at us. And I do think that, this indeed hurts. And I think the government is going to have to be very careful how they pursue this. I think probably we are going to see the company tried just because the Court of Public Opinion has now decided that it shouldn't get a fast break. Although, again, we'll see how that plays out. Because, again, as Canadians, I do think we are proud of the Canadian brand. Part of what Trudeau has done is make Canadians feel proud about Canada internationally. And this looks like he's still got something to cover to deal with. And so I think that, therefore, yes, it is going to have some effect on how business practices go forward.
Mm-hmm. Charles, very finally, there's an accusation from the left that the right wing has made a big meal out of the fact that women, and especially an Indigenous woman, resigned from his cabinet because this is Trudeau, the man of a diverse cabinet, and so on. Is that fair that the right wing has milked this?
Well, I don't think the right wing is milking this, and I think if it was, the shoe was on the other foot, and we always have to ask ourselves these questions when people are making partisan remarks. What would happen? What would the Liberals be saying if a Conservative Prime Minister threw out an Indigenous woman, the first Indigenous person to be a Justice Minister in Canada? When you look at the horrible record that this country does have, that does embarrass the heck out of us the more we learn about it, our treatment of Indigenous people. So if you ask yourself the question, how would the Liberals in opposition treat a Conservative government that has fired the first ever Indigenous Minister of Justice and Attorney General, I think the Liberals would be just as harsh as the Conservatives are right now. Okay,
Charles Adler, Colin Robertson and Ethan Liu, thanks for joining us here on The Newsmakers. I've got a wrap. The European People's Party is one of the largest voting blocs in Europe, and the Christian Democratic group likes to describe itself as a family with shared political ideals. Well, like many large families, not everyone is getting along. The EPP is threatening to boot Hungary's Fidesz party for abusing migrants, restricting press freedom and corruption. Well, Prime Minister Viktor Orban apparently is ready for a fight, threatening to pull out and start his own voting bloc with Poland. All this as the European Parliament heads into elections in May. Melinda Nucifora takes a look.
Magyarországnak az a célja, hogy az Európai Unió minden intézmény rendszerében, illetve intézményrendszerén belül minden intézményben első lépésként kerüljenek többségbe a bevándorlás ellenes erők az Európai Parlamentben, majd néhány hónappal később oda jutott a liberális gondolkodás Európában, hogy ma a szabadság első számú ellensége. Tehát a liberálisok a szabadság ellenségei ma Európában.
Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban isn't mincing his words. But just in case his anti-immigration stance isn't clear enough, his Fidesz party has been posting these billboards around Hungary, accusing the European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker of trying to flood Europe with immigrants. It's the last straw for many of his European parliamentary colleagues. They say Fidesz no longer represents their shared values.
So it's up to him to decide in which political family Fidesz should be placed. For us, the criteria are clear. We are a union, we are a political family of values, we are a political family for common ideas, and everybody who is based on these common ideas can stay and should stay and is invited to stay.
But for others, the family rift has gone too far. Some members are petitioning to have Fidesz expelled from the European People's Party. So, why does it matter if Fidesz is in or out? The European Parliament works alongside the Council of the European Union to amend and adopt EU law and balance the EU books. It's made up of 751 directly elected members from 28 member states. But instead of voting along national lines, members form ideological groups. The European People's Party is the largest and most influential. Some members are concerned that keeping Fidesz within its ranks could damage its campaign ahead of the European Parliament elections in May. Others fear if Orbán's party is squeezed out, Fidesz members will move to the far right and strengthen the EPP's Eurosceptic opponents. If the EPP loses those votes, it could lose control of the parliament. The group will meet next week to decide what to do. In the meantime, the black sheep is continuing to challenge the family's values.
Olyan időket élünk, amikor egész Európában egyre kevesebb gyermek születik. A nyugatiak erre a bevándorlással válaszolnak. Amennyi hiányzik, annyi jöjjön be, és akkor a számok rendben lesznek. A magyar ember másként gondolkodik. Nekünk nem számok kellenek, hanem magyar gyerekek.
Orbán has agreed to take down the posters, but not to tone down his rhetoric. Melinda Nusafora, The Newsmakers.
Well, to discuss this, I'm joined now from Warsaw by Dominic Tosh, a member of the Polish Parliament representing the ruling Law and Justice Party. He's also Vice President of the European Conservatives Group in the Council of Europe. And Daniel Barta is the Director of the Group Centre for Euro-Atlantic Integration and Democracy. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. Daniel, let me start with you. So it seems as if the EPP wants to expel Fidesz.
Thank you.
And Viktor Orban saying, well, we might leave ourselves. Is this a real crisis?
I don't think it is a crisis, but this is not a new thing. So those who want to expel Fidesz from the European People's Party are the same parties that have criticized before Fidesz a number of times. The question is how to deal with European party politics following the European parliamentary elections and ahead of the parliamentary elections. Now we see the campaign phase, and in the campaign, European People's Party has to show that they are finally taking an action, because this is a demand coming from most of the media channels in Western Europe. Do something against Fidesz. And now, seemingly, they are doing a move which looks very well in the current campaign. The question, what happens after the European parliamentary elections? And I think the chance for expelling Fidesz is much higher following the elections, or Fidesz might voluntarily leave following the elections.
Okay, so Dominic, does the EPP have a point where if you want to be a part of this group, you have to, at the very least, share some of the values? So they look at the Hungarians and they see those posters, for example, of Juncker and George Soros and this idea that they're just bringing in all these refugees and destroying European civilization. Does the EPP have a point in feeling that Fidesz is not playing by the rules of the club or the group?
So where was the point, EPP point, throughout these years? They just found out that Orban is not sharing their values? Of course not. It's all about their panic. They know they're going to lose these elections. They know the Prime Minister Orban will send his people to the other fraction. He's going to join probably our group, European Conservatives. And what they're trying to say, in their panic, they're trying to say, oh, he's not sharing our values. What about these values throughout these years? Something's changed? Hypocrisy, that's what it's called. They are panicking. They know that they're going to lose, and then trying to keep their face and their dignity now, saying, okay, we don't want him, he's bad. New parliament, European Parliament will be just a shake of the air for the leftists. It's going to be completely different. And I might run, probably I will run, and believe me, they are not waiting for me.
Right, okay, so you are running. Can you confirm that?
Probably.
Okay, okay, well, you heard it here first.
Highly probable.
Okay, highly probable. What would you want? Do you want an alliance with the likes of yourself, Fidesz, Le Pen, Salvini, Austria's Freedom Party? Is that what you want? Is that the type of European group that you want?
I tell you what I want. I tell you what I want. What I want is a European Union and the Europe as a continent, which is origin, which is coming back to the roots. I want Europe as it should be. I don't want any kind of new civilization in Europe. I want Christian Europe. Europe was always Christian. That's what it is.
So
Christian
you want nativist,
culture, Christian law,
populist,
Greek philosophers.
European Union.
This is what Europe is about. It's not. It has nothing to do with populism. It's all about our identity. You can change your clothes, you can change your makeup, you cannot change your DNA. Our DNA is Christianity, by the faith, by the culture, by the law. So you cannot change your DNA. It's like you would say to someone in Saudi Arabia that their roots, their veins, their blood is Christianity. I'm wondering how they would react. This is Christian culture. This is Christian continent. It has to stay Christian. We have to defend it. And I will defend it in European Parliament if our voters will decide it. So it's very important for the next generations to care about our identity. And identity is much more than politics in 2019. Identity as a past and a future. So we have to remember about it.
Daniel, to what extent is that view more prevalent in the year 2019, what we just heard from Dominic?
Well, it's valid for Poland, but I wouldn't say it's valid for all the European countries. I mean, we have the Christian culture, and this is something we share, and mostly this is what the conservatives are very much emphasizing. But the truth is that most of the people are not following any religion in the European Union. Most of the people in Hungary are not religious. So their motivation is characterized by the motivation related to religion. But it's true, the majority supports the idea of protecting the cultural values and Christian cultural values of Europe. That's true. But probably the real question right now in Fidesz, whether to support the federal Europe as sovereignist or Europe of nation states. I think this is the real dividing line right now, and Hungary and Poland is supporting the idea of stronger role of nation states working together in the European Union and not supporting a federal Europe.
No, what about Italy? What about Czechs? What about Slovakia? It's more than 2 countries. It's not only Poland and Hungary. It's much more. And you will see after these elections, after the election in May, many more countries will join Poland. And Poland will be a real leader. We are becoming a leader in Europe now. We are coming back to the roots, and many more will join us. You'll see the new European Parliament will be completely changed. European Commission will be completely changed. And the direction will be completely changed. We have enough of Germany and French who are ruling the rest like babies. We want European Union. We want to be the part of the European Union. Law and Justice was always in favor of the European Union, but we want to be the partners, not the small children. Now the time is changed. You'll see in May what's going to happen in European Parliament.
Daniel?
Well, public opinion polls a little bit suggest something different, and that suggests that although radical forces will gain more power in the European Parliament, but generally the change will be not vital. This is what the public opinion polls show. Well, the question is whether the party system will remain, and that's, I think, an important question. What also Prime Minister Orbán suggests that the dividing lines, the party structures that existed before, might be just the historical ones. And there should be a major reconstruction of parties. New parties should emerge, and the dividing lines will be different between what he called those forces that are pro-migration and those forces that are anti-migration. But in generally, when you see the daily politics, this is the forces who are looking for a more federalist Europe, wants to see more European integration, and those who would like to have more control of the nations, more sovereign forces. This is the dividing line. And actually, numbers suggest there will be no major change in the political setup of
Daniel, would you consider Dominic a radical within this context?
I would suggest that he responds more to a kind of Central European sentiment and Central European opinions about the future of Europe. But he belongs to a party that is characterized as radical in Europe right now. Still, this is still not the mainstream if we see the numbers. And he is he's deeply conservative. I would characterize him not. There are much more radical forces than.
I'd like to answer.
Go ahead, Dominic.
Okay, basically, if history is radical, I'm radical, because history is very clear. This continent, Europe, was Christian, was built on Christianity by the culture, by the faith, by the law. So if history is radical, I'm radical.
Okay.
Radical, it doesn't mean
Dominic, that wasn't,
homophobic,
that wasn't
doesn't mean populist,
sailing, right?
doesn't mean nationalist.
Dominic, it wasn't smooth sailing, right? There were decades in which there was tremendous butchery and bloodshed as well, right? So it had ups and downs, and history is not a linear thing. Yes, fundamentally, Christianity is deeply rooted within the continent, fair enough. But you're also painting a very rosy picture of the past.
If we are looking for the values, if we are looking for the values, we have to build on the values. Our value is Christianity with the culture, with the faith, with the law. And, you know, we don't want, okay, let's go to the point. We don't want Soros in Poland. We don't want any lobbyists to take care about our democracy. We don't want any lobbyists to take care about freedom, our freedom. We don't want Soros to build his media the way he wants us to live. We want to be, and we are a proud Polish nation, Christian nation.
Help me understand,
we want to
Dominic,
take care about our children and about our grandchildren. We want to save them from this madness which was started by Angela Merkel with illegal immigrants. And this is what I'm going to do in the European Parliament.
Okay, in a nutshell, can you help me understand how Soros is trying to destroy your society? Because a lot of the time, this just seems to be a mythical boogeyman.
As he does it in any other place in the world. What he does, he's financing media. As you know, the media is a fourth power. That's number one. He's financing NGOs, right? So non-governmental organizations, which are leftists in 100%, fighters, I would say. They fight everywhere where the conservatives winning elections. He's trying to influence the elections in many countries. He wants to rule the world. Thank God, not for long. He's not going to stay with us for long. I'm not wishing him anything like that, but he's not going to take care of it. I know some people will stay and try to finance it, but we have to fight against it. And I'm going to fight against it in Europe for my grandson and next generations. It's not a big word. It's just a fact. When you see what he does in many different places in the world, it's just terrifying. Democracy is a beautiful system, but without Soros.
So, Daniel, we've heard Dominic's criticism of George Soros and what he attributes to Soros's influence, and we're hearing similar things from the Hungarians. Help me understand what that means from your perspective.
From my perspective, it means that you always need a scapegoat, and he is a perfect scapegoat to characterize. I mean, he's supporting all those organizations that are raising their voices for human rights, raising their voices of media freedom, for anti-corruption, and well, these organizations are very uncomfortable for governments like the Orban government because they are basically becoming the opposition in a country where the opposition doesn't really work, because they are the one raising those concerns.
So he's a politician now?
No, he's not a politician. The thing is, he's not present really in Hungary, and very often things attributed to Soros or organizations.
Why he's not present in Germany against Angela Merkel? Why he's not present in Sweden? Why he's not present in Norway? Why he's not present in any leftist state? Why he's only present in...
By the way, don't think he's present because those organizations are there and they are doing their activities as well in those countries. The problem is that I don't think the corruption is so deep problem there than in our societies. It is a problem. It is a problem. Human rights is a problem. Your government...
Okay, he wants to be the master of puppets. He will never be the master of puppets in Poland. Soros will never be the master of puppets in Poland, ever.
Well, I'm not a politician, so I can't really comment this, so...
Okay, Daniel, I want a final answer in terms of just looking at the political...
Sorry, that's what he's trying to do.
Okay,
he's
you
trying
don't
to take
want him
over
to be
the
the puppet
nations.
master. Okay, you believe he wants to be the puppet master. Daniel disagrees with you. Daniel, I want to ask you how things might transpire here. So, if Fidesz leaves the EPP, obviously they might join the other grouping, right? Such as making an alliance with Dominic and others. If they stay, are we likely to see other more centrist parties go and join other groupings? So either way, is there going to be a shakeup?
Well, not necessary, because EPP was a broad coalition of very different parties already, and it's not unique. I mean, think about the socialists, where the Smer, which was very often criticized, is still a member. Think about ALDE, which has members like Andrej Babiš from the Czech Republic. So these are very loose coalition of parties in the European level. It's not the same system as a party system within the country. So if they can sort out some of the problems, there is a chance that Fidesz might stay and they will be able to work together, because these differences were there for many, many years. Now, there is also a chance that they leave. Already, Dominic claimed that he will join ECR. Other groups, ENF, also claimed that he will join ENF. I don't think... Probably. Yeah, but I don't think we are talking about ECR as it is now, or ENF as it is now. I think there will be kind of real changes on those parties. Some of them will merge, some of them will move from one group to another group. So if this is the case, this will be a largely different ECR, different values with different parties, with different issues. But there are issues that I think, and let's talk about for a moment for ECR, that ECR will have to sort out, because if there are internal problems in EPP, there would be internal problems in an ECR joined by Viktor Orban and Matteo Salvini, because let's put one thing on the agenda, Russia question, how they think about Russia. Would you share how these parties and these politicians think about cooperation with Russia and the position with Russia? So it's not that clear how can they work together and what will happen when real issues come up, like redistribution of migrants, because Matteo Salvini would like to do that. You heard that Poland and Hungary would never support something like that. So there are questions that would be the problem in the more national radical right as well, if they would try to work together.
Understood. Okay, I've got to wrap. And Daniel, it's good that you pointed that out. They might be united on immigration, but divided over issues like Russia. Very finally, last 20 seconds of the segment. Dominic, you're running, it seems, highly probably that you are. What's your campaign slogan? Give us the line.
Save Poland.
Okay.
Make Europe great again. Okay. And I'd like to say thank you very much, Mr. President, to President Donald Trump.
Okay. Save Poland, make Europe great again. Dominic Tosh and Daniel Barta, pleasure having you both on the Newsmakers. Thanks for joining us. That's all for this edition of the Newsmakers with me, Imran Garda. Check out more of our stories on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. Remember to like, follow and subscribe. Next time, renewed US sanctions cripple Iran's economy. Now the president is in Iraq asking for help to keep Washington at bay. Are sanctions bringing the Middle East closer together? Until then, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.